Order. I think we have all the folks on the committee that are here, presently here, physically here. So let's go ahead and get started. And why don't we go ahead and, Carolyn, are you doing the roll call for us?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Boykin, representing the State Treasurer. Here. Ms. Zumot, representing the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Ms. Ortega, representing the Director of Finance. Chairperson Hendricks, you have a quorum present.
Thanks, Carolyn. Okay, so our first item of business is approval of the committee agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, our agenda is approved. Item 2 is the approval of our minutes. And I was looking at this, realizing our last minutes was last September 2015. So I will say, and Joy Higa, my colleague, the vice chair of the committee, is not able to be with us at this board meeting, but we were chatting with Andrew and staff about beefing up, as we called it, the benefits and services agenda, because there are quite a few things that we need to discuss. And I know investments has taken a lot of energy and time and continues to be a priority. But, you know, as an active member of CalSTRS myself, I think when I think about who we are and what we do, investments is certainly, you know, critical. But really, at the end of the day, it's making sure that teachers get a retirement that they understand how it works, that it gets checks on time, that when they call our service center, people answer and give them information and help them retire with dignity. So we really are going to work with staff to address issues in our committee throughout the year. We have 3 planned sessions throughout the year that we'll talk about in our work plan. But there's some good work to be had. So approval of the minutes for the September 2015 committee. Any questions, edits, feedback? I'd entertain a motion. Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. So our minutes are approved. And item 3 is the presentation of our retirement progress report. Andrew, this is something that I know all of our members. Well, some of our members, when I go out and speak, I know they don't even know what I'm talking about when I mention this, which always kind of shocks me. I know we're working on that, but you know, this is such a critical piece of information that we give to our members for them to be able to understand kind of where they stand on their road to retirement. So, Andrew,
okay.
The floor is yours.
So in front of you, we have handed out copies of the sort of a sample retirement progress report for both participants in the defined benefit program and the cash balance program. The annual update process ran fairly smoothly this year, so members can now see their updated balances when they log into My CalSTRS. Any questions on that?
One thing I was going to ask you is, so in general, because I even know in mine, I have DB and CB from back in the day when I was like an adjunct faculty. Is that, so people can see both of those, right? I mean,
That's my understanding. In terms of what the view in MIC is, I'd have to ask staff if we have that, and if not in the room, I can get you that information.
But in general, like if a member is in 2 different, I know they're not technically supposed to be, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you try and roll the CB into the defined benefit, but people can, we do have some messy situations with part-time faculty and things like that end up becoming hired as full-time or.
Yes, and we were working to resolve those issues.
I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because I talk to those members all the time. But my point is, I guess, when they get this, or a lot of times now our members are going online to look at their annual progress report, which is great. They can see both on the online.
Again, that's my understanding. I'm not sure. Yes, I'm getting nods in the audience, so they are able to see both.
Okay. And do we have, I don't know if this is jumping the gun to the satisfaction survey, but do we know how many folks have opted to get the paper version of our, like
Yes.
opted to stay and get the paper version of our annual report?
Yes, it's my understanding that, and this is going to be very approximate, but I think the most recent figure I heard was we were somewhere in the 30s or 40,000 in terms of members who have opted for paper as opposed to electronic.
And that's
That number
out
has
of,
been
what, 400, how many retired people, annuitants we have?
approximately
400,000?
400,000. Yeah. So that number has increased
Okay,
slightly.
okay. Any questions from committee members? Seeing none. Are there any planned changes for this? I mean, I know we've made a lot of changes in terms of making sure that the progress report, especially I like the part where it talks about the checklist in the back, so you can kind of figure out how old you are. I look at that a lot and figure out which level I'm at this point. Are there any other changes that you guys have talked about?
We'll continue to identify enhancements in the short term, and then, as we go forward with our pension solution implementation, that will probably have significant implications for how we produce that annual update, and kind of, it may not need to be a sort of annual process. Members may be able to see real-time information anytime they log in, so we'll have more information on that, and I'll keep you updated as we go forward with our implementation.
And then the folks that are, and I'll grab you, Ed, in a second, but the folks that are the 2% at 62 folks, I know that there's always like the special message section, but I guess I'm curious about the transition that's happening, because now we have, I know at our campus, we just hired 15 brand new full-time faculty under the new structure, and they talk to all the other faculty at our school who are not in that structure. Is there something that we flag in their report that makes it clear that they're under a different structure besides just the special notes in the report? Does that make sense?
I believe, but I'd have to look at the thing the way it turned out. I thought it was actually identified in the,
There's a section on the third page that says special messages, and it says you are like for this example, you're a 2% at 60 benefit structure. But I'm wondering if there's something a little more like on the first page or for the 2% at 62 folks that lets them know, hey, in bold, recognize that you're under a new structure, a different structure. Because our faculty, and I know teachers talk to each other a lot, and they kind of go, oh, you're in a different structure. So I just didn't know if we're highlighting the fact that those new members are in a different structure or not.
yeah, I'm not seeing it offhand, but other than in the special message one, it may be the place where it is.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to, in terms of answering your question about additional information, we are, I think one of the things we'd like to do, particularly as the new system comes online, is to integrate the information on pension 2 into the RPR, so they can sort of see a more comprehensive look at their at least what CalSTRS has as far as their retirement finances.
So you're saying if they were in pension 2, in addition to this, that they would have a report
They
included
would
in
get a
this?
report that would be in this.
I think that would be great. Okay. Any other comments, questions?
No, what occurs to me listening to the conversation is, I think in addition to providing that kind of balanced information, there's most likely an opportunity to enhance some of the educational offerings that we provide into the RPR. So just sort of one more avenue for us to promote or market the services we offer.
I mean, I think that idea, Ed, is a good one. I mean, we're trying to, I feel like I'm living this on the front lines right now. I'm doing an orientation for those new faculty this Friday, and I'm going to talk about pension 2, and Kevin Kirkpatrick is going to come to our campus. And I just think our members, the more I go out and speak, the more I am kind of shocked at how little our members understand this. They
Yes.
look at this and they literally look under the DB section and say, oh, I have this much money in my pension. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
that's not how, you know what I mean? So I think
Yes.
it is a little confusing. You look at it under DB and you go, oh, $88,000 in my pension. And I'm like, that's not how a pension works. And so so I just, to me, I obviously just the more I know we're working hard, but I just think for a lot of folks when they look at this, it's hard to navigate. I think we're making it easier to navigate, but I really like the idea of adding the pension 2 information, because I think numbers matter. And in that particular case, being able to see compounded interest over time is powerful.
Yeah, one of the things we've done too, I know in the member education area, is developed a tool to help members understand what their estimate is actually telling them.
Yeah.
Maybe we have an opportunity to provide some of that additional clarification with this publication as well.
I think it just goes to what I know it's like a dead horse, I keep talking about this, but sort of ways that we can do more outreach to our members, because I think, again, when you receive this and you open it up, I think if I were just a member who had no exposure to CalSTRS and I was just a teacher, you know, you look at that bottom section on page 1 and you just make a lot of assumptions about that
Right.
without any interpretation, even though you explain it all in a lot of these, in a lot of the paragraphs. And so I've just been thinking a lot more about how we can make member education a little more user-friendly and a little bit more kind of, I realize sometimes I start talking about pension reform and I'm like, the last thing a teacher needs to hear about is that. They want to know, how is my defined benefit calculated? That's all they want to know. You almost like 101 or a survey class.
Meaningful, relevant, simple.
Yeah, keep it simple. And so the more we can progress in helping members understand some of these complex issues,
Okay,
the better. Thanks, Andrew.
great, thank you.
All right. So item 4 is member benefits planning services.
Okay, is there, oh, clicker's over here, pardon me. Okay, so in response to a request from members of the committee, we put together a presentation to kind of walk you through the state of benefits planning services currently. So to kind of start this off, I think most of you are familiar with our defined contribution solutions programs and the division formerly known as client outreach and guidance. In kind of looking to more comprehensively address the educational needs of members, we have combined these various disparate programs into one kind of holistic division called retirement readiness. And this new division encompasses our defined contribution solutions and our member education program. So we're looking for kind of synergistic opportunities to provide more comprehensive information to members. And in terms of the service delivery model, you're familiar, of course, with the MSC initiative, Member Service Centers. So I wanted to kind of demonstrate just very quickly where the MSCs currently are. So we've got West Sac, Glendale, and of course the year that they opened for business. And you can see in the past 3 years, we have really streamlined our process and are opening one member service center per year. And this last year, we're now completing the San Diego Member Service Center, which is expected to be open for business for members in November. And at that point, we will be done with the Member Service Center initiative. Some 8 years in the planning and construction. So a lot of our internal resources are going to be freed up to focus on kind of the next phase of looking at how to enhance service delivery for educational opportunities for members. We have, as you can see by this map, really focused on I'll go back and stay there, focused on the urban areas of the state, and the opportunity now is sort of, as you can see, in the north and the central parts of the state in terms of providing services. So right now, you know, we have shifted from that contract model for service delivery to a state employee, CalSTRS employee model. I wanted to just demonstrate to you the remaining contracted offices that we have and how they work with our MSCs. So this portion of the state, we have state employees stationed in the Sonoma County Office of Ed, so we're partnering with that COE to provide a place for members to come for educational appointments. The Santa Clara Member Service Center also serves 2 satellite locations where staff consistently deliver educational sessions. So we, San Francisco several days a week, and the Contra Costa COE at least 2 days a week, depending on the service demand and how many staff we have in each one of those places. 2 in Sonoma, 7 in Santa Clara. So the northern part of the state is covered by a mix of contracts and the West Sacramento Member Service Center. We regularly visit the Shasta County Office of Education and the Butte County Office of Education. We have contracted staff in Humboldt and in Placer. And
Andrew, when you say
Yes.
contract, so we have contracted staff.
that's correct.
That means they're CalSTRS staff? That
They're not
doesn't mean
state
that,
staff.
right? That
They're
means that
a
they're,
mix of, perhaps former
so it's kind of
educators
what we
or,
did
right,
before with the county
employees
Office
of the County
Education.
Office of Ed.
Okay.
And
And
so
that's just because,
we've
don't
shifted
have the-
significantly. We haven't completely eliminated all of the contracted positions yet.
okay,
And I've got some slides later that kind of speak to some of the
Okay, I'll let
specifics,
you-
but okay.
move on and then I'll ask questions.
Good question, though. Anticipatory. And then a little bit more kind of around that central part of the state, which is quite large, and there are numerous population centers in different places. And it's also, for those of you who've driven around the state, fairly time consuming to get from one place to the next. So this is another place where we still have a fair amount of contracted staff. Santa Cruz, Kern, Santa Barbara, and Fresno. And again, as we turn from the MSC initiative, this is the part of the state that we're going to be looking at what makes sense. Do we, we're done building member service centers, but perhaps there's an opportunity to lease space and hire staff with the understanding that they'll be traveling. That's part of the job, is just to go from place to place to place and make arrangements with the COEs to lease space from them, either at low cost if possible, so that members have a place that they know they can see a CalSTRS representative. And the remaining contractors are also folks, in many cases, who have worked with CalSTRS for a long time and are very kind of aligned with the way we're delivering services, have volunteered to come and be trained in some of our more recent developments, for example, the Financial Awareness Series. And so they're delivering top-notch quality.
That's always my concern, because I think we've had
Yes.
issues in the past, I'll just put it
Right.
that way, with contracted services in the past. And I like the idea, it's always hard when I hear, teachers say, oh, I heard this from one person, but, when you hear conflicting information.
Yes.
And so obviously, as much as we can all be on the same page, singing from the same hymnal, making sure that we're up to date on issues around part-time community college faculty, substitute teachers, and like all the little challenges that that a lot of these folks are calling in about those problems. And it just seems like in the past, we haven't had sort of that sense of I want to say uniformity, but consistency, I guess, in terms
Yeah.
of the quality of information being given out.
Consistency is a key word,
Yeah.
and a key concept for us. And I know, our new director of retirement readiness, Sandy Blair, is very focused on consistency, and we're working together to set up an infrastructure that will help ensure that, as we move forward to further develop this statewide program, consistency is kind of a linchpin of what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Also, one of the things that I've been thinking about is, in my field, I'm a speech language pathologist, and they've started doing teletherapy. So you can actually, as a speech pathologist, I could provide speech therapy from Los Angeles to someone in Elk Grove at a
Yes.
school through Skype in my laptop at home or something. And I've just wondered if we've thought about using technology in that way so that, to your point of, especially I used to live in the Monterey Bay Area, the traffic, and then even going from LA to Santa Barbara takes a lot longer. And so we thought about like tele-counseling or...
Yes, and there's a slide on that later in the presentation,
Sorry,
so I
Andrew.
will.
I'll just take my coffee and you
Another
just talk.
excellent
You just talk
anticipatory
and-
comment, yeah.
All right.
And this is just sort of an overview of where we've come from in the last 6 or 7 years, moving from the contracted model to the state model. So as you can see, we have significantly reduced the number of contracts we have. And of the 7 contracted offices, San Diego will soon be replaced by, of course, the last member service center. So we've seen really a 70% reduction in the number of contracted offices. And from a dollar standpoint, in FY 09-10, we were at 4.4 million. Now we're at approximately 1.2 for the contracts, and that includes San Diego. So, we have significantly reduced the amount of dollars we spend on contracts and have instead invested that in state staff and greater consistency for the program. And while it's not exactly a dollar for dollar switch, it's quite close. Switching to the member satisfaction piece, in terms of the satisfaction that members report with their benefits planning session, we're seeing a very steady and consistent high satisfaction in terms of answering that question, what is your overall satisfaction with the session?
Andrew, do we ask them that like a day or a week after the session? Do we ask them a month after the session, or when do we ask them about?
We send out an email survey right after the session.
Okay.
So it's quite point in time.
Okay.
And then the wait time satisfaction is something that, we've been working steadily to kind of, there's a few different things. I mean, in terms of when members call during peak season, it's difficult to get them in swiftly. So what we're doing is trying to do a better job with our scripts and setting up expectations for members, and letting them know that we've got group session availability or telephone session availability. And I think we're starting to see that pay off with a marginal increase in the member satisfaction with wait time. Wanted to talk a little bit about CalSTRS Pension 2, because satisfaction, or I should say performance of the program, has been improving. As of July 1st, 2015, we had overall assets in Pension 2 of $553 million. We set a 12.5% growth target and exceeded that, performing at 13.8%, for a year-end total of $629 million as of June 30th. And that I'll give credit to Sandy and her team for the performance and for some of the targeted marketing strategies that they have conducted in the past year. Growth in participation has also exceeded the target at 18%. However, the target of 3% was greatly exceeded. We had 9,300 active participants as of July 1 and as of 15, and then as of 6/30/16, approximately 11,000 members. So we had a growth of about 1,680. So the marketing campaigns are paying off. The educational opportunities in which we talk about the need for defined contribution as well as the defined benefit, I think, are starting to make some strides. And here's another slide where you can see some of the growth in new enrollments over time, both in the 457 and in the 403B.
Andrew, I've got a question from Grant here. See if I can use the new system appropriately.
It works. Thank you. Have we ever done an analysis to look at, say, scenarios of side-by-side, same age, same service, a post-PEPRA and a pre-PEPRA member, in order to get to the same replacement income, what they would have to contribute to Pension 2? I just think in terms of marketing, that might be nice to have as an example.
That's an excellent suggestion.
Okay, yeah.
Have we done something specifically like that? No, but I'm going to take a note because I think that from a marketing standpoint, that will help drive some demand from the PEPRA members.
I think that's a good suggestion, Grant, because I do think the metrics and actually seeing, dollars and actual numbers is very motivating just from a member's perspective. When we do the compounded interest talk, and you see over
Right.
20 years, it's
Right.
that really gets people engaged. So I think that would be an interesting
Agreed.
comparison. That's great.
Then I don't know how to turn this
Oh.
off.
Oh, okay.
Get out of
I
it.
think you
Do I have to do something?
I think you do, but
Would
I
be
don't
a
know what.
training opportunity coming
I'll
up
get
soon.
you. Okay, there we go. I think I clicked you off. There we go.
Okay, so and one more kind of point toward where we're looking to grow our educational program. And so I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have personal examples of where teachers are solicited by the pizza man. And, come to our session, we'll feed you a free lunch, and we'll talk to you about this, air quotes, great investment opportunity, which often involves an inappropriate product or something that is not necessarily in the member's best interest. However, our CalSTRS benefits specialists are, those are the kind of people that we want to get into, if not the break room, onto campus, or in the district office or in the county office of ed. So what we're doing is adding additional staff to the Retirement Readiness Division who will be able to, who we can devote to outreach and education, so that we've got staff in our member service centers who are constantly meeting with staff or meeting with members one-on-one and conducting group sessions, doing telephone sessions, but there will be additional staff whose job it is to respond to inquiries from the county offices of ed, from the districts, and from large campuses where we can go out and talk to members where they are, and that we have capacity to do that. And in concert with that, we will be marketing our services. So, for example, yesterday, Robin and I were talking to a group of business officers about, the new system and some of the data that we're looking to ask employers to report. And I talked a little bit about member education, and the assistant superintendent spoke up and said, it would be great to have you guys come on campus. And in terms of marketing, 30-second kind of videos that you could text. Turns out his daughter is a member. She teaches at Twin Rivers here in the Sacramento area. And he said, young members respond to texts. They don't really log onto the computer and go to a website. But if you can get them on their phone, then, just a suggestion, but something that I've heard multiple times and something that we're talking about internally that I'll also talk a little bit more about when we get to the technology piece. But just in terms of outreach, I think that, from a direct sales standpoint, there's a lot of people going to school campuses saying that they're happy to talk to you about your CalSTRS benefit, kind of planting the seed in the member's mind that they're somehow associated with CalSTRS when in fact they are not. Yeah. We would like to get more of our own actual CalSTRS benefit specialists.
Andrew, can I just chime in though? Because one of the things we've talked about too is that we tend to, and I know this is, limited by staffing and time and money and all these things, but we tend to wait for a district or a county office of education to initiate and say, hey, we'd love to have CalSTRS come. What I'm hearing on the front lines is people don't even know that that's an option. People don't know that CalSTRS has all these great staff. I mean, they know in LA because I talk about it all the time. Yeah. And we have Glendale, so I'm always having Jennifer Helfand come. And so I just wondered if in this next year or two, if there could be a strategic initiative or something where, and we have, stakeholders in the room that could give input on it. But if there was a way to say, let's target the 10 largest community college districts, let's target the 30 or 40 largest school districts, or and communicate with our stakeholders, obviously the faculty associations and teacher associations. But, and so instead of waiting for them to initiate, for us to be initiating out. Do you know what I mean?
That's an excellent suggestion. In fact, the gentleman, the assistant superintendent I spoke with yesterday said, if you sent me something, I'll send it out to all of my districts. Right. I'll send it out to every school. And it just sort of, there was a light bulb moment where, we can be pushing content, and it's not, again, the half-hour video or the taped session of a group session. It's more the 30-second pitch. Here's what we can do for you. Right. So that we're getting into the HR offices and the personnel offices that deal with retirement, and it's sort of free content. Oh, here, let's just send this to all the members. Right. So I think that's a terrific idea, and the 1 to 2 year time frame is definitely a period in which we can look at how to make that happen.
I would love that, because I feel like we're this jewel. We have, when our staff come, it's, our faculty are just like, I didn't realize I could do this pension 2 thing. And so I just think sometimes, people don't know that they can ask for a workshop or someone to come out. And so I think that we need to probably take the initiative. And as soon as they hear, Elk Grove has someone or Shasta has someone coming out, then everybody else in the area hears about it and says, oh, we want CalSTRS to come out too. Like when we spoke at Butte, everyone around Butte College was like, how do we get CalSTRS to come out? So I think creating that kind of buzz, but that it's CalSTRS reaching out instead of waiting for the districts to initiate, because honestly, our districts, I'll just speak for mine, they don't really understand, all the opportunities that CalSTRS
Yes, and I know
has for
Sandy and her
members, so.
team are very focused on proactive marketing. So I think we're going to start to see a lot more of that happen in the next
Because
year
we
or
get
two.
emails in our mailbox almost every other day from these other
Right,
organizations. And
exactly.
as the local chapter president, I send an email to everyone saying, you can do whatever you want, but I'll just let you know that you should be careful that they're using the CalSTRS language and they're not representing CalSTRS. And so I just think, they're clearly to me, the bad actors are taking a lot of initiative.
Yes, they
And so I
are.
think it would be great for us to be taking that initiative too.
Thank you. And so just from a kind of a standpoint of where we have coverage in the state between our MSCs and our contracted offices and the satellite places where we send staff, this is sort of a map of where we've got opportunity to meet with members, just sort of as a visual. And so you can see again that Central Valley area, there's opportunity. Northern California, some opportunity, not as many members as in the Central Valley, but Central Valley is where we're going to focus on next from a service delivery standpoint. And also, to kind of the,
Hang on one second, Andrew.
go ahead.
Let me get you in there.
On that, when you say opportunity, do you mean folks have requested it, or I'm sorry,
I think
what is that?
it's not necessarily requests, and if we're talking about the Central Valley,
Or just even the state, like what is the dot representative of? Or is
a
a
dot.
stakeholder engagement on the map?
Yeah,
so
and so
what is that?
stakeholder engagement, and what I'm talking about is really where we serve members, and so perhaps, a better caption would be, these are the
Okay.
offices. But, right. Because we meet with members, but these are also opportunities for example, with our pension solution and the need to train employers, we will use our member service centers. So it's not just members that we're seeing in all of these locations. For example, in our member service centers, we plan to use those to help train employers on our new system when that time comes. Hence the stakeholder kind of, because our member service centers will be multi-use. Some of the smaller contracted offices, we see members only. That's not necessarily going to be a place to train employers, but that's where we have staff. Each black dot is where we have CalSTRS staff.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. And then kind of going back to the conversation about our staffing model and what we're looking to do moving forward. We've got our defined benefit education and pension 2 education, or defined contribution solutions education that we need to provide for members. So as we add staff, we're going to have to take the opportunity to provide maybe a more hybrid kind of benefit specialist, more people who can speak not only to the defined benefit, but to the pension 2 or the defined contribution portion of the program. And then finally, to get to the leveraging technology piece, in terms of what we've done, we have done webinars in this past fiscal year. And while telephone sessions aren't necessarily high tech, that is a service that we offer to reach members who are in the more remote parts of the state. And to Sharon, your point about the telecounseling or the virtual sessions, that's kind of the place that we're driving to next. That's something that with our new pension solution, there will be a greatly expanded array of services for members to self-service or schedule their own appointments, access more real-time information. And once we're done with implementation, which will be several years from now, that's where I think we can really zero in on the virtual counseling experience. In April of this year, I was in Texas for the CEM conference, and Texas Teachers Retirement System did a presentation on they're doing some virtual telecounseling, if you will, and they were working through a lot of not necessarily bugs, but kind of learning opportunities. They showed us the email that they send to members to make sure that the members, have the right browser, have the right equipment, have everything that they need on their end. And it was like a 3-page email. It's very complex. And I think it sort of struck us in the room that, that will get simpler swiftly. and more members will be comfortable and have the right technology. So we will continue to work toward that. Where I think we can get, the marketing and the proactive and get on campus in the next year or two. The virtual counseling piece is most likely going to take us a little bit longer because, of course, we do have the pension solution project to focus on. And that, as we go through implementation, I think will help define the parameters and show us specifically where our opportunities are relative to providing that service. Any other questions?
I have these images as you're talking of, in a perfect world for me, it's like you can be in a room full of 10 teachers and have a faculty association representative or someone kind of helping facilitate it with food or something. And then Andrew Ross shows up on a, we have technology and all of, well, functioning technology, not always, but technology in a lot of our conference rooms. And it would be like, 10 people in a room, Andrew Ross' face comes up. And I know there's like personal information, so I guess everyone would have to agree, we're going to share all of our retirement info with each other. But I'm just trying to think of more, since we have so many issues with the, getting appointments and the backlogs and just creative ways where, like I said, I always tell people it's like, there's such a layered approach in understanding your retirement. You have to go to like 10, I'm still learning so much about our system. I feel like I'm still, always learning something new. And so, but having a way to get folks together and kind of use it time efficiently, but then having a staff person, a lot of us go out and talk about the stuff, but I feel more comfortable. That's why I drag Ed Durman with me everywhere. I'd rather have a staff person talk about it because, I'm not a counselor. I'm not a counselor staff person. And so the more we can just think creatively about the group sessions and getting out to where people are at, because sometimes it's hard for people to go to a service center.
Agreed.
And they're more comfortable just hanging out in a lounge at their campus.
Yeah,
So,
and the competition, to our earlier point, is aware of that, and they're taking advantage of that opportunity. So we're definitely going to focus our energy on that in the short term.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Any other questions? Seeing none. Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
I just from the beginning, sorry, I didn't know we were asking as we went along, but from the beginning of the conversation around the counselors and what have you, and I know we've talked about it in this space before, but can you remind me what are the training requirements for the contracted as well as the STIRS counselors on an ongoing basis?
So the new benefit specialists are required to go through essentially a 6 to 7 week new employee training, or NET. And regardless of whether they're a contracted staff or a state staff person, they go through the exact same training. And so we used to they always had to come to headquarters. We now have a training facility in Glendale. So for the member service centers in the South, we're not having to fly people back and forth to train them because that's sort of a long and expensive process. But they do go through 6 weeks of intensive training. And so there's focused on kind of the basic CalSTRS benefit. Then they go through putting together estimates, as well as some sensitivity training, because some of the counselors are working, or some of the benefit specialists, new nomenclature, need to work with members who, have lost somebody or are dealing with a disability issue, and then work with staff at headquarters to service those members. And one of the things, too, relative to the training piece, our Disability and Survivor Benefits Director, Melissa Adams, the Acting Director over Service Retirement, Diane Alsop, and Sandy Blair recently visited all of the MSCs to make sure that staff in those remote offices, so that they could listen to staff in the remote offices and see where we had opportunities to provide more comprehensive services around specifically the disability and survivor benefits and some of the more kind of complicated questions around forms. So there's a 6-week upfront training, and then there's kind of ongoing opportunities like the one that I just referred to.
So I just wondered, in follow-up, so you talked about the ongoing stakeholder engagement and the employer trainings and what have you. Do those local contracted or STIRS employees, are they leading those trainings, and are they, it's like train the trainer kind of model, or how do we? to make sure there's some consistency in that employer training if they're leading it.
Well, so the employer training, specifically that's related to the pension solution effort and what they're going to need to do. And so we're working right now with our director over the Member Account Services Division, Christine Briseño, and a number of the folks working on the project. So we've got CGI training staff as well as CalSTRS training staff. So there is a train the trainer model. And then the project training staff will train our sort of service, the benefits areas trainers. So it's kind of a wave of training, train the trainer, so that we train as many people as possible. And then sort of that last largest group is what will go across the state and provide a very specific, very consistent training in terms of how to log on to the system and provide the reporting that we're going to need from the employers.
Thank you. And I really appreciate all the efforts and upcoming efforts to make sure that that piece is really solid. I mean, in our audits and, appeals situations, we're looking more and more for this front end work to be as solid as possible. So,
Yes.
right? So,
Front doors and
Yeah, and
Really
part of
appreciate that.
what we're doing on that front end. So Robin and I and Peter Haley and Valerie Ferris just are going around the state right now talking to people, business officers and associated groups, kind of talking about what we think we need and what they're able to give, and engaging in an ongoing dialogue with them so that we can identify what asks we can make and what asks might be kind of a bridge too far or might not get us the result that we need. So we're doing the engagement piece up front as well, which is a good segue into the next.
Yeah, and I just had a quick question for Raina. I looked back on the agenda and saw item 3 was a consent action item. Do we need to vote to approve the presentation on the progress report, or I don't know if that was just okay. So should it have been an information item then, or okay? I just wanted to double check and make sure I was doing my job. All right, great. So let's segue, Andrew, into the next one. Item 5.
Okay.
Employer outreach. Which
And so
again, in connecting with Michelle's comments, I know the appeals committee, we've chatted about making sure both employers and employees, especially with the creditable compensation issue, that we do our best on the front end so that our appeals, our appeals committees, that our members are better informed, and then obviously the employers, so that when they're making offers and especially when people are nearing retirement and there's always this, can you just stick around one more year and work with the chancellor? I always get nervous about those invitations. So fill us in.
Yes, and so again, in response to requests from committee members, we wanted to talk a little bit about what we're doing with regards to employer training and education. And so I'm going to talk about a couple of different things that we're engaging employers on from a training standpoint. And of course, the one of the largest topics is around systemic audit findings, and that's really because for those of you who participate in the benefits and in the appeals committee, we see some of the results of systemic audit findings on the back end, and that appeals process is expensive, it's time consuming, it's difficult for the member, and so where we can be proactive and mitigate that from happening, we will take that opportunity. And so I just wanted to sort of point out internally, our strategy for dealing with systemic audit findings involves working collaboratively, benefits and services, with legal and audits and risk management to really identify where the opportunities are, what kinds of issues we're seeing come up over and over again, and what we can do not only to provide training, but is there some sort of regulatory tweak that we need to make? Those kinds of issues. And so this team is comprehensive and collaborative, and I think it's important because certain things we might think we can do on the program side might not necessarily be possible from a legal standpoint. So it's important that we work collaboratively to address where those opportunities are. And what we have found in terms of the common audit findings, employers have continued kind of not confusion, but uncertainty perhaps around whether some kind of activity is, creditable to the defined benefit or if it needs to go through defined benefit supplement. Outgrowth activities, remuneration in addition to salary, and excess sick leave. These tend to be the more common systemic audit findings or audit findings in general. And so we're looking internally to provide greater clarity, whether that's through an employer circular, employer directive, or from providing our own internal staff better training, more comprehensive training, so that they can provide a higher level of service to the employers when they call in with questions.
Andrew, outgrowth activities, is that, outgrowth, is that like coaching? Okay, that
Yeah.
word kind of doesn't capture it for me, but I don't know if I do.
Um,
Ed, did you want to?
It's activities that are related to the instructional program, but it's not necessarily direct instruction. So it's a teacher who coaches or a teacher who does
Right.
newspaper advisor.
I'm just,
that
right,
kind
I
of-
get the concept, it's just I guess we don't use that term outgrowth to
No,
describe
it's,
those
it's
things.
it's a
Is
statutory
that an internal?
term.
Oh,
It's a
just-
statutory term.
Of
yeah.
course it's statutory, because Ed German was involved, it's statutory. Okay, got it, thank you. Got to comply with the, statutory.
Yeah, and some of the, again, to sort of some of the questions that came up in these, I don't want to call them road shows, but when Robin and I and the team are going out and talking to employers about, the new system, and then we have an open forum so folks can ask questions, staff from business offices can ask questions. This comes up often, when is it creditable to DB? When is an activity like that or an outgrowth activity creditable to DBS? There is sort of continued, I think, opportunity for clarification on our part around that. So we're continuing to work with that. Wanted to also kind of show you what the Member Account Services Division is, what they offer for employers in terms of support, outreach, and training. So there's a secure employer website. There's a lot of information on that site. Employers can access it 24/7. We have an employer hotline that comes into the Member Account Services Division with a number of staff available to answer that. Staff are, for the employer-specific reps, what we're doing now is trying to kind of pair a rep to an employer so that there's that consistency. They know that they're calling the same person over and over, and all of those people are receiving consistent training. With the creditable compensation regulations, there's a fair amount of complexity. So it's, I think, incumbent upon us to make sure that we're providing clear and consistent information, which may sound simple, but involves a lot of coordinated training and testing to make sure that staff understand and are all in agreement on what a particular activity means. And we also have a program analysis and training team, and the training team works not only with employers, but with staff internally, again, to make sure that we're delivering consistent information to employers. And the kind of training that we provided just in the last fiscal year, a number of sessions that covered, a range of topics, but again, the things that seem to keep coming up over and over are, creditable comp, retroactive adjustments, or, it's actually retroactive pay increases and then also adjustments, compensation adjustments. Those are things that can cause some uncertainty in terms of what employers, they're not always sure of how to report something. And so what we're doing is trying to not just be responsive when they ask for training, but identify trends and areas so that we can, to your point in the previous presentation, Sharon, be a little bit more proactive in going out and heading some of these problems off at the past before heading these opportunities off before they become problems.
CW?
Say it again?
What is
SCW is the Secure Employer website.
Oh, okay.
And so that's something that we provide training on as well. And that's also something that the new pension administration system will replace. And that's, to the training issue, something that we'll be focusing on in the years to come. And just kind of an example of the employer helpline calls, you can see an increase over time, a fairly significant increase. And, not coincidentally, that coincides with implementation of creditable compensation regulations. So we know that
At
we
least
have
they're
an
calling us.
opportunity
That's
to.
good, right? That's a good sign that they're calling and not just
Yeah,
guessing.
it's
or...
good that they're calling to ask questions, and we're staffed up to handle that. And, hopefully over time, we'll see that start to diminish. However, as we move forward with implementation of our new system, there will be other training opportunities that I expect we'll continue to receive a fair amount of calls on for the foreseeable future. Satisfaction from the employer survey feedback. So unlike when members come and see a benefits specialist, we have one sort of point in time survey. Annually, we ask for feedback from the employers. The high satisfaction areas that employers gave us thumbs up on include customer service focus, that single point of contact, courteous representatives, so the training that we're providing for staff from a customer service standpoint has been working, and the ease of access to staff, so making sure that someone's available to answer the call. And where our opportunities are from that employer survey, that really comes around the consistency of the information that we're providing and the training opportunities. And so, again, training is working with audits, is working with legal to make sure that internally we all agree on the information that we're providing to employers in terms of how accurate and specific it is, and then working to develop a more comprehensive training plan, because of course with 1,700 employers, we can't necessarily go out on a regular basis to a majority of them. And so providing training via webinars is a tool that we use consistently. And for kind of the higher level training needs, for example, when there are systemic audit findings of a group of employers, we'll send folks in person, because we think that's more likely, that's in terms of a focused use of our available resources. That's where we get the most return on our investment. And then just wanted to finish up with kind of the pension solution employer training approach. As we move forward with our implementation, at this point in time, we know that we'll be needing to start providing training to employers, most likely sometime within the next year or so. And so that's going to be a mix of in-person training, computer-based training, and webinars. At this point, we know that we can go and visit large employers at county offices of ed. We can host groups of employers in our member service centers. And then for the employers who aren't able to come to an MSC, or who maybe aren't large enough that we can hit them in that first wave, we'll have computer-based training modules that we can deliver via webinar. And that's the strategy that we have at this point. We're still working internally with our training teams in collaboration with Team CGI's training folks to understand kind of how to cover the state. For example, in the Secure Employer website, while we only have sort of somewhere in the 60s in terms of the reporting sources, 60 or 70, there are over 2,500 distinct user IDs for the Secure Employer website. So that's a lot of folks that we need to provide training for. And, some of them only log on once a year. Maybe they're the higher level folks in the district and just sort of checking on things. But there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of folks who log into the Secure Employer website every month. And when that goes down and the new pension solution training portal or employer reporting portal goes up, we're going to have to provide training for at least 1,500 to 2,000 individuals in kind of a 6-week window. So it's going to be this mix of training strategies that we take advantage of to accomplish that. So in addition to kind of the regular training that we have from a creditable compensation standpoint, we're also folding in implementation of a new system. So we've got a lot of opportunity in the coming years.
I've noticed, Andrew, in your whole presentation this morning, the opportunity is a nice way of saying some challenges and some issues. I say issues, but no, I mean, I think we already have recognized that districts have challenges with, so adding creditable comp and then adding a new system, you know, there are definitely opportunities for us
and that's
to grow together.
Well, it's one of
and
the,
hopefully make sure that we're accurate in our, I mean, I think that's at the end of the day, that districts understand the system and then obviously that they're inputting accurate data, because that ultimately impacts our members. And
that's one of the reasons that Robin and I and the team are reaching out to the districts and the business officers specifically to demonstrate that, you know, we want to engage with them. We want to hear from them in terms of what their issues are so that we can both, you know, use the opportunity associated with the new system implementation to get better, you know, more complete, comprehensive data, more accurate data, but also do it in a way that's not overly burdensome from the employer standpoint.
Right.
And that, I think, you know, they're very receptive. We've had some really positive experiences.
I'm hoping at some point, maybe, you know, in the next 12, you said kind of the next year or so, that we'll be able to kind of, in the committee again, kind of get an update on how that's going and what are some of the opportunities that you're
so
appreciating in that process.
I think in the next Benefits and Services Committee, I'll definitely have more to report about kind of what we're doing about that. I'll be happy to share it with you.
Michelle.
Yeah, I was just going to emphasize the importance of the single point of contact in that employer line. I can only imagine how useful that is for employers. It's one thing to train on things as they come up, but you know, particularly in a time of not just teacher shortage, but administrator shortage, that I imagine there are lots of creative solutions to try to keep people on board and what have you, and to have that point of contact to keep themselves out of trouble, you know, and to have someone to sort of bounce off. It is really valuable, but I imagine it's also when you talk about, you know, the number of folks and the training for your internal staff with audits and legal, how challenging that must be as well. You can't cover every scenario, which I'm sure makes those in-person meetings all the, you know, the more helpful. Is what are you trying to do? You know, sort of versus the scenario call. What if I, you know? So I can just have a great appreciation for the work that your folks do on to that end. So thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
All right.